Back in the 80s and 90s, when I was in the repair business, I was considered by many to be one of the finest or best troubleshooters in the area, especially with VCRs, because I was trained by Sony for Betamax, which VHS works just like it. This one it's got multiple problems. You're going to be sticking around for a while because we have so many different problems on this thing here. I don't even know where to begin. Let's check this one out. Hey guys, still got a VCR to work on. I know, don't let the name fool you. This is not an Electrohome. It's a Mitsubishi. Let me explain. Back in the 90s, actually in the 80s, Canada had an embargo on Japanese companies bringing product into Canada. If you wanted to sell a product in Canada, you couldn't just bring it in. You had to pick up a failing Canadian company in order to bring your product in. So they wouldn't allow Mitsubishi into Canada unless Mitsubishi purchased a failing Canadian company. And Electrohome was ripe for the picking. Electrohome was a large Canadian manufacturer of televisions and stereo equipment going way back. But they fell in hard times with the Japanese dumping a lot of their products in the early 80s. And the Canadian government of the day felt that they had to protect the Canadian market and restrict what was coming in. But it didn't work because the company still failed. So to get into Canada, Mitsubishi had to agree to purchase the Electrohome brand, and then they could sell their products under the Electrohome name in Canada. And they did, even before they could operate and bring their own equipment in. A few years later, they had to maintain the name for 10 years. So in Canada, and you didn't see them in the United States, you had Mitsubishi brand, but here we had a lot of Electrohome branded equipment that was actually made by Mitsubishi, and this was one of them. So I don't remember which model number this one was. I do have an HS U82. Well, actually mine is the J05. Electrohome J05. The letter determined the year. So after there was the H, then the J, and then the K, and then the L, and that was the series of model that Mitsubishi had on the Canadian market. So this is one of the later ones. Mitsubishi would have been selling Mitsubishi branded equipment at the same time in Canada as this one. They kept the name going for about 10 years, and then Electrohome just kind of disappeared, and then it was just Mitsubishi. And then Mitsubishi disappeared because they never got the market share that they felt that they should have, which is unfortunate because I think Mitsubishi made one of the best VHS VCRs that you could buy, especially the later models. The earlier ones, not so much. The earlier ones had a lot of guideposts that came out, although servicers like myself, we loved them because we made a ton of money. Like some days I would do 10 Mitsubishi machines, and I forget the model number, but they were kind of ugly. They had a circuit board on top that you actually had to remove and lift the board out to access the mechanism. Some of you might remember those ones. I forget the model number of them offhand, but crazy, sold tons of them. Anybody in the Canadian market will remember crazy. That was their ads. And they were a large retailer that I think they started in, where did they start? Winnipeg maybe? Or was it Calgary? Anyway, we had them out here. The store is actually still there. It's now a Vision store. But we had crazy. We used to call them nutsy. But, and they were a retailer that was very well known for bait and switch. In fact, I used to consider it a challenge to go down to that store and try to buy something that they had advertised, and I did once. It was a General Electric HiFi VCR. Now, at the time, HiFi VCRs were selling for around, I think the entry-level ones were like $600 for like a Panasonic, and the GE was a Panasonic, and they had one advertised for $333.33. It was nailed down. You couldn't buy it. They had one on display, and they had one in a box. We used to call it one to show, one to go. But that one that they had in the box for sale, they would not sell it to you. You walk into the store with the ad. Hey, I want to see this VCR. And the sales reptile would take you over and, oh, this is the machine here. Yeah, I want to buy it. Oh, we don't have any. We're sold out. it would pull up the under. They had them sitting on tables with like a piece of fabric hanging over the front of the table, and they kept the stock below. They lifted up and they had all the new boxes below there. Oh, there's one there, you know, and they had to have one. They couldn't advertise it if they didn't have at least one available for sale. So they did not want to sell the one that they had left. They had the display model and they had one on for show, or one to go as they called it. One to show, which was the display model, and one to go. But if they sold that last one, they couldn't advertise anymore for that model at $333.33. So the salesman did everything that they could to try to switch you to a more expensive model, including telling you how bad the one that they had for $333 was because it was only a two-head machine. And that was technically correct. It was a two-head machine. So EP recordings would look the same as EP recordings on any machine, but SP recordings did not look as good because it used the narrow 22 micron heads instead of the 68 micron heads that a four-head machine had. But that was their tactic. They sold tons of those Mitsubishis, and I forget the model. It might have been like, I think it was a 465. Does that number ring a bell? Anyway, it had a big circuit board, and you had to actually lift the board up to get to the mechanism because the board covered the mechanism. And every single one of those, the guideposts fell out on them. Sometimes they would fall right out, and we put them back in. $60 a pop. There was some days I did 10 of them in one day because it was like a 20-minute fix. It was $60 to do it, and we saw so many of them come in because they were a relatively inexpensive machine, but they were a pile of crap. But then Mitsubishi got their act together, and they came out with this chassis, and this chassis was phenomenal. One of the best VCRs on the market, period. They beat Panasonic at their own game. Sony wasn't a big significant factor because Sony didn't have much in the way of VHS when these ones first came out, although Sony roared out with their VHS and kicked some serious ass when they brought their VHS machines out. But these machines were workhorses, and I've got several of them still that some of them are fixed, some of them haven't, some of them need to be repaired. But these were great machines. This one was shipped in. I don't know what's wrong with it. Let's plug it in and see what it does. Now, you might be wondering, what makes this unit so great? Well, for starters, in the era that this was made, pretty much everybody had gone to switching power supplies. Does that look like a switch mode power supply? That was one of the strengths. Although these caps were famous for exploding and pissing their guts all over the circuit board, it doesn't look like that's happened on this one, because when it does, the board is all wet. And I don't know, down there, what's that look like down here? Besides the dust, maybe not, but you can normally see it down here as well because it soaks through the board. They do have capacitor issues. They do fail on these Mitsubishis, and they fail quite regularly on them. The other strength to this unit was it's got an aluminum die-cast chassis. One of the weaknesses is the grease dries up. It used that black molybdenum type crap grease that gets dry and it needs to be replaced. In fact, all those packs of Moly Coat that I've been using for years, which I've now run out of, but all those packs of Moly Coat came with the replacement pinch roller because the pinch roller always broke when it got seized up. And when you bought a new pinch roller from Mitsubishi, you got a pack of Moly Coat with it to replace the grease. That was a weakness. The grease on these goes bad and it gets gummed up, not only on the top, but on the bottom side. So that's a common failure on this unit. But other than that, these things were pretty much bulletproof. Right from the time that they left the factory, they were fantastic machines. I've got some, I used to use them as duplicating machines. I've got some that have got a couple thousand hours on them. I haven't used them for a while because I'm using a Panasonic now as a playback machine. No reason other than the fact that it's newer and it gets the job done. But I've got my Mitsubishi still in storage. Most of them are Super VHS. I'll haul them out someday when I need them. Another weakness that the Super VHS machines had was the comb filter. They bought it from JVC. Junk, very cheap. They all failed. They all had the same problem. A surface-mounted cap on the comb filter module went bad on them all. but that was only on the Super VHS machines. And the symptom was it would play a regular tape, but if you put a Super VHS tape in, it looked like utter crap. This one, I power it up, and it doesn't want to power up. Watch. It just goes off, and then it comes on, and it goes off, and it comes on. So, we may have a power supply problem. So first things first, let's rip out the power supply and check those caps, because this one's doing weird things. Now, it might be something else. It might be something more serious than that. It might be something going into a severe overload and jamming and shutting it down. But how's the capstan motor? Is it seized, or is it... Ooh, that doesn't want to turn. Let's pull the bottom off. That capstan motor feels like it might be seized up. So let's just rip the bottom off, like tearing off a band-aid, and see, because that should, when I tried turning that by hand, it should have turned, and it didn't. And the fact that when I hit the power button, it tried to turn on and then turned off. Well, typically what the machine does is when you turn it on, it goes through a self-test where it power cycles all the peripherals, and the motor kicks, for example. It tries to turn the motor. If the motor was stuck, it would not be able to turn the rotor, and it would fail its self-test when you turn it on. And it looks like it tried to turn on twice and then turned off. Again, we could have a power supply problem, but let's rule out anything mechanical before we go down that road. I haven't even looked at the note that is probably with... Oh! You think we have a problem, Houston? We have a melted belt. That's another common problem. This is probably why it's shutting down. It tries to turn and it... Oh! It can't turn. The belt is turned to mush. Here's a real common problem with these. Besides the belts turning to mush, this gear, this pulley also cracks. And not only has it cracked, that capstan motor is seized. So we got a couple things to do here. I don't know whether this has been glued or not. Somebody may have glued that. Most of them were glued. Yeah, that one's been glued because it would slip if it didn't. This is the first time that I actually came across the phenomenon of the shrinking plastic pulleys. Before we saw it on anybody else, we saw it on these ones. They cracked and then they would slip. And what would happen is that it would accept the tape. Usually it would play. And when you tried to eject the tape, because the loading mechanism is controlled, or the tape lifting mechanism for the front loader is controlled from the capstan motor, it would spin. And quite often it would fall off. The cheap fix was to just glue the pulley back on, complete with the split. Mitsubishi actually had a brass gear, a brass pulley that you put on there and glued it in place, and they supplied epoxy, and you put that on, and that fixed that problem. But we gotta find a belt for this. I don't know if I've got one or not. I might have a belt. That's only part of the problem, though. That should be turning a lot more free than that. I'm actually having to push on this thing to turn it. So first things first, we're going to pull the capstan motor out and fix the lubricant problem on the bearing, because it's seized up. This one spins nice and easy, but this one here, yeah, it doesn't. You see, I have to actually turn it, and when I turn it, it should spin. It should be like this. It should spin freely, but it doesn't. It just stops right away. So that's dried up. We'll pull the capstan motor out. I'll just undo the connector here first, and we're going to drop it out from the top. 3 screws, and we'll drop that out. I'm hoping that I'm going to have a belt that will fit. Otherwise, I might have to try to source one and order one in, which means that this won't be fixed today. This will be a few weeks to get parts. Anyway, there's the motor in all its glory. The bearing is going to be gummed up. So first things first, let's take apart the motor. Move the Jesus clip, and then the rest of the rotor will push through. Take off that top half. What happens on this is people get overconfident when cleaning these machines, and they take a Q-tip that's completely saturated in alcohol and they clean the capstan. And what happens is the alcohol runs down and gets into the sintered bearing and dries up the lubricant. So we got to clean this up. Just remove any washers and stuff that's on here. There's a washer there that's got to come off. There is the sintered bearing. And is there a top piece? I think there's a top piece that pushes out of this too. It's been so long since I've worked on one of these. Okay, I got a Q-tip with some IPA, India Pale Ale. Ha 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 ha. There we go. That will have cleaned out any crap that was in there. This one here doesn't look to be too bad. I don't see any real bad. Don't see any real bad wear on it. We have an upper and a lower bearing on here that I got to get oil into. It's a two-part bearing. There's this part down here, and there's another one up here that I try to get some oil into. Now these are sintered bearings, so they are designed to hold oil in them. Someone's probably going to chime in about the oil quality I'm using. It's 3-in-1 electric motor oil, which is just standard SAE 20 non-detergent petroleum-based oil. Nothing fancy. It's not motor oil. It's designed for electric motors. And I use this on everything. And it's never failed me yet. And I've been using it for 40 plus years. So if you've got an opinion of it, keep it to yourself. It works. It works as good as anything else I've ever used. And I've used lots of different oils over the years on things. And this works really well. It's designed for electric motors. Last time I checked, this is electric motor. But I've used it on everything. I've used it on clocks. And it works fine on them too. Now, of course, I'm going to get oil. Now, you see how much more freely this turns now? Well, it's not really. I haven't got the clip on it yet, but oh, you know what? I don't have the bottom of the bearing on either. Get this piece on, this metal, the metal bearing here. Get that on there, and we'll put a drop of oil on here as well. Now you see how smooth that turns. That's what it's supposed to do. We got the top of the bearing that goes on here now. This is what's supposed to keep the cleaning fluid out. And if someone cleaned it and they used a minimal amount, that would. But what the problem was is people would saturate their Q-tip with so much oil that it would just roll over top of this piece and right into the bearing, and well, it dries it out. Wet head cleaners were very bad for that too, because they're going through a wet cleaning tape is going through, and it's being squeezed against the pinch roller and the capstan shaft, and it would wring it out. So all SOP cleaners were just a disaster. You know, it's like, I'm surprised that somebody didn't have a class action lawsuit against them for all the VCRs that they broke over the years. I mean, hell, everybody's got class action lawsuits going on now. Look at Apple. Apple just got sued and won in Supreme Court here in BC. They now have to pay everybody money for slowing their phones down when they put a software update on that slowed down the phones to, you know, make you buy a new phone. Although collecting might be difficult, because what they've done is on that lawsuit, they're telling people, well, you need the serial number from your phone. So someone who had an old iPhone 6 or iPhone 7 or whatever ones were affected, if they hung on to their phone and they've still got it, then they're in luck. But if they've gotten rid of the phone, then Apple's going to tell them to go and pound sand and take a short walk on a long pier or a long walk on a short pier, and basically to FO, because if you don't have the serial number, they're going to tell you you are SOL, if you know what that means. And if you don't, use your imagination. Okay, we'll reinstall the capstan motor. Somehow like that. Goes in there. It does fit. Don't worry, it does fit. We'll deal with this. Got to kind of hold the capstan motor in place and put the screws in. A lot of dust in this machine. I think this thing's been sitting around for a while. First thing I'll do before I even look for a belt is I'll power it up and see whether it'll actually power up. Obviously it's not going to load anything because I don't have a belt on it yet, but we'll see if it'll power up and not shut down. At least try to go through the motions, because that at least will let me know if I've got other problems that I got to deal with. Okay, let's turn on the power, or plug it in first of all. And I'll try turning on the power and we'll just see. Oh, look, the capstan motor turns. It's going to turn on now. Or is it? Yes, it's going to turn on. No, it's not going to turn on. So we got more problems. It might be because it wasn't fully unloaded. Oh, what was that? I'm turning the mechanism by hand here. Oh, that's that, probably that capstan motor is still squeaking away, but it turns off right away again. But at least it's trying to turn it. I don't like the sound of that either. Listen to the bearing. Mode switch needs to probably be cleaned. More than likely it needs to be cleaned. We'll do that next. We'll clean the mode switch. I want this thing turning on and staying on. Right now if I hit the power button, it turns on for a second and it turns back off. Again, we may have a power supply problem, but it could be any number of problems mechanically. This mechanism here gets all gummed up. This grease turns to like glue. This grease here, it's probably gummed up. This stuff, black grease. This all gets gummed up on here. We'll do the mode switch first. We'll check that out. I'll look and see if I can find a belt for this thing. I might have one, or have one that's close enough that'll fit it. Okay, I got a belt here. See, the old one was all, it just broke. The old one was shot. I got another belt here, which looks to be the right size. It goes around there and provides some torque. I got a smaller one too, but this one's probably the right belt. I do have a little bit smaller one as well, but I think that's probably the right one for this application. I do have another one here. I've got a couple of other ones here. If it's not, pull the mode switch and give that a clean and see what else I have to do to this machine to get it to run. When you bring a soldering iron into one of these machines to take out the mode switch, stay the hell away from that edge, because that's magnetic. If you touch that with your soldering iron, the motor is shot. Keep anything hot away from that outside edge, because it's magnetic. It's picked up over here by the FG generator. It's a Hall effect device that picks up the signal, and it's used for speed. And if you touch it, you'll ruin it. The heat from the iron will instantly, and I mean instantly, degauss the magnetic field. And then that just pops out just like that. Then we can just pop it apart and see how bad. Yeah, it's pretty sad. Before putting any cleaner in, I'm just giving it a polish first. We'll get the cleaner in there after I polish off all the crap that's on the silver contacts here. This would be silver plated copper, I'm sure. And then we can put some contact cleaner in. I'm just using Neutral. And to answer your question, I use Deoxit and Neutral equally. They both are very good cleaners, especially the old vintage Neutral that I've got. This stuff is the old stuff. The new stuff is not as good, And that's the old stuff, because this one here had, if you look on the back here, it contains our favorite cleaner, tetrafluorethane, also known as Freon TF. So yes, it eats the ozone. The new stuff has got alcohol. So this is you won't find any of these unless you find someone who's got an old stock can. I've had this one for, well, since before they banned it. I bought a couple cans when it was still available. I use it quite sparingly because I know when it runs out. I had 2 cans. One of them's already run out. I know when that one runs out, I'm going to have to buy the new stuff. Maybe I'll just use Deoxit then, because Deoxit's pretty good. It's expensive though. That's the only thing with Deoxit, is it's really expensive. And I'm not happy with the company right now because of what they did about, 3-4 years ago, I guess now. They had that video contest, which I entered, and I won first prize. I got $1,000. Got a gift card for $1,000 US, a Visa card from Keg. So I was very happy, and then they invited me to participate in the second annual video contest, only to be informed that I was disqualified because they had detected that people had been voting using VPNs and voting more than once a day using VPNs. And that was a direct violation of the contest. And even though I had no knowledge of it and did not encourage any of this, people on the internet just went ahead and did it. And I got disqualified, as did the next guy, because they detected they went and audited all of the entry forms and found that even though people have been hiding behind VPNs, see, people that use VPNs think that they are anonymous, but they are actually not. It doesn't take much. A lot of these VPN companies will sell you a VPN service and promise you that you are anonymous, and you're really not anonymous, because it doesn't take much in the way of forensics. Anybody that knows what they're doing can actually figure out your location. Doesn't take much to get by a VPN. It's a lot easier than what the companies that sell you this service would like you to believe. Back in the day when everybody was using VPNs just so they could watch Netflix from a different country, well, Netflix wasn't really investigating that closely, but they are now. But other companies did. They did audits, and it's not hard to do it, apparently, because I got a notification that, because somebody was using a VPN, they disqualified myself and the guy in second place and said, nope, sorry, too bad, so sad. Those are the rules. So that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth as far as using and promoting their product, because I got disqualified. I was leading at the time, and I got disqualified because of something that the people voting for it did, using VPNs. Gotta make these pins stick. They are not. Let's try it again. See whether I get any different results now when I try powering it up. Is it going to power up and stay powered up? No, it's not. Well, wait a minute. Nope, it's not. It turns off again. So we have other faults besides the obvious mechanical faults. There's something else wrong here. Is it the loading motor? No, that turns. Okay, I guess now it's time to look at the power supply. And something's making a noise. Is it this? It might be this little pulley on this loading motor. It's trying to do something, but it's not staying turned on. It turns on and then it turns right back off. I'll show you guys the front panel here. You see, if I turn it on, it just goes on and then it goes right back off. So it's not happy. It's not happy, that's for sure. We'll check the power supply next and just check those caps on the power supply. See how they look. See if they're gone bad. The caps on these power supplies were notorious for giving us headaches. And by headaches, I mean they leaked. Quite a common failure on a lot of these Mitsubishis. And people think it's just switch mode power supplies that blow up. these ones had a tendency to fail just as often. That's because most of these were made in the fish oil era of caps, although I don't see any leakage on here. Like, I don't see any evidence that they've gone bad. They're Rubicon. Oh yeah, yep, you can see it. Take a close look at the bottom of this one. Oops, it'll zoom in a little too close there. Get that camera to focus. Focus. What is that leaking out of the bottom of that cap? Yes, I think this one is bad. What do you think? Good old Rubicons. And everybody loves those. They're not any better than the Chinese ones. And I should point out where this VCR was manufactured. It was not manufactured in China. Oh, come on. Melt, damn it, melt. Yummy. This other one's also going to be bad. Pretty much guaranteed. I'll change all 4 of them on here because, as you see, these power supplies tended to eat caps, even though they were linear power supplies. These caps were all made at the transition to the fish oil water-based garbage. See, that one's leaking too, you see? That's a 2200. We got a 2200 here. Fresh pull from a TV that had a broken screen, so the set was working, other than the fact that somebody got upset with the Super Bowl results and smashed her screen on a TV was not that old. It was a 3-year-old set. So I think these caps are probably okay. I don't have any in this size, or I would put new ones in, but I don't have any. Alright, let's plug the power supply in and see if I get any different results. Hopefully it'll turn on now and there's nothing else wrong, but we'll find out pretty quick. Alright, will it stay on? No, it doesn't. So we got other problems. We got other problems besides caps that were leaking, and they obviously were leaking. You can see that those were bad. No question that those were bad. So in addition to the caps that were all spewing their guts, this thing's still got issues. Look at the drum on this thing. I mean, this thing looks like this thing hasn't been touched in 20 years. Look at all the crap on the bottom of the drum. Like, this thing's been sitting probably, 20 or 30 years. I don't know how old this thing is. At least 20 years, I think. This thing's probably been sitting. Well, this was from, what year? 92. This thing's probably been sitting, since, probably 25 years. So I'm going to turn the mechanism by hand through the loading. I don't know why these had this little tiny belt on here. It served no function whatsoever other than to break and get jammed up. It does nothing. There's a little tiny belt that went to this pulley. I think it was there probably to unload it, so you could just do that instead of getting your fingers down into here, but it always jammed up, so I just got rid of it. I'm going to run the machine into the loaded mode and then plug it in and see if it will unload. Maybe it's just trying to go through a self-check and it's gummed up, so I'm going to run it through its paces here and see whether it'll unload. I'd like to see if it'll stay powered up just before I start investing a whole bunch of time on this thing, because this is a regular VHS machine. They're not worth a hell of a lot of money, so I'm not going to spend hours and hours and hours. Look at how dirty that drum is. I mean, that is just ridiculous. This thing may not even work. If I get the mechanism working, it still may not work.
I can tell you right now, there's 3 more faults to find.
But I'm going to run it through its paces and just see whether I can get it to turn on. before I start really digging deep on this. So let's just see if it'll unload. Oh, well, it tried. It's trying to turn on. It's weird. It turns on for a couple seconds and then turns off. Looking on the bottom side of the board, there's some of this black, this tape that deteriorates and can go conductive. I'll just scrape that out of there. I don't know that that's causing the problem, but the fact that it's turning on and off like it is, weird problems. Weird, strange things can cause strange problems. Same with this deteriorating tape here with the foam on it. The adhesive can go conductive, turn into a resistor, and well, when you're dealing with logic circuits and stuff, you get a voltage showing up on a control line where it's not expected, and all of a sudden things just, go sideways. Just like the old conductive glue that caused so many headaches in the past. I mean, I see some rust on this tuner here. I mean, I guess in theory, if there was a short circuit in here, if water got into it, shorted something out, you'd have all kinds of strange problems. It's like it tries to turn on and it's doing like a self-test of some type, and then it shuts off, it turns off. Okay, I covered up the end sensors and I loaded the tape manually, and the motors are turning on, which is good. Are all the motors running? Let's see here. I don't feel the capstan motor turning. Maybe that's the problem. Well, no, I felt it turn there. Yeah, the capstan motor did turn. See, it's trying to do stuff, but it's just not staying turned on. Now, it could be that the mechanism is just so badly gummed up that it's going into an overload. We'll throw some grease on here and just see whether we put a little bit of grease in the mechanism and just see whether that will keep this thing turning on. It's weird. It could be mechanical, right? It could be jammed up and it's just drawing too much current from the loading motor shutting down when it tries to do anything. So I'll just put some lithium grease into the mechanism here just to see whether maybe it's just gummed up. Weirder things have happened when mechanisms get gummed up, right? Could very well be that. Although it's not likely, but it could be.
The mechanism needs to be lubricated anyway, so I might as well do it now.
Put some grease on the rails here and see if I can get it to unload. Because certainly this black grease, it has to be changed out anyway. Still not staying turned on. We got heat coming from that tuner section on here. I wonder if that tuner is screwed. I'll turn it on and see if it gets any hotter. Do we see anything else heat up when I hit the power button? Whoa! What the hell? Watch that again. I hit the power button. Watch this. Woohoo! I think we got a dead short on here. I think that maybe this tuner is foobar. That's right there. Let's disconnect that line. That's power going into something. Somewhere in here there's power. Where the heck is it? But something's getting real hot real quick. You can see it. It's right there. It looks like that connection right there. There's a capacitor across there too. What the heck is this? Is this a power supply voltage for something. Something's getting warm, and as I say, when I turn it on, it just like it's like it's overloading. And C08 is the one that looks to be getting hot. Now, is that cap shorted? Well, let's just disconnect it first of all and see what happens. Interesting. You think it could pay for itself in no time. Everybody needs one of these things. They're cool. I'll just disconnect that cap and see whether maybe that cap's got a dead short. Something's loading this thing down, right? That's what's going on. C08. We'll just disconnect that wire and see whether that thing still gets hot, because that trace heated up real hot right away on the infrared camera. But let's just measure across that C08. We definitely have a short there, 1.8 ohms. I'm going to remove it. Again, if it's a tuner problem on this thing, I'm just going to disconnect the tuner because there's no analog broadcasts. So nobody in their right mind would fix a tuner. If it's a tuner that's causing it, it's getting disconnected. It's really that simple. But there's this little cap here, and it's this one. Is it that one? Where is it? C08. This little bastard right there. And I'm just going to pull this out and just see what it looks like. It looks like it's shorted. What do we got to use here? Can't get at it. It's where it's hidden on the board. It's in a tough spot to get to. It's right there. Let's see if I can grab it with something. And you yank that cap out. And I might even disconnect this tuner completely. Okay, let's grab that thing from below and pull this out of here. Oh yeah, it's green. It's green! It's leaking. That is definitely bad. Look at that fucker. That bugger's bad. For sure, that bugger's bad. Let's just plug this thing in again and just see whether it turns on or whether it's still giving me hassles. Will it turn on? And will it stay on? Hey, it's staying on! Woohoo! Oh, it went off. Stayed on longer. Let's see what else is doing. Well, it's staying on longer than before. Let's just bring out the thermal camera again, turn it back on, and we'll take another look at this and see if anything else is heating up. Again, if that tuner is shot, I'm disconnecting it. And just disconnect all the leads to it, because it might be the tuner is bad. Although what I don't know is it might be looking for data from it, and if it doesn't get it, it won't turn on. But let's just see what happens now when I hit the power button. We're not getting that. Oh, we're getting something else getting hot over here. Oh, that's the IC. That's the IC that's getting warm. So it's
Watch the capstan motor.
at least it's staying turned on longer than before. Staying on 5 seconds now instead of going off after like 2 seconds or 1 second.
I still have the end sensors covered. It's trying to eject the tape. If I remove that black tape, this should work.
I mean, maybe it needs that cap. What is it? Let's just see what this thing is that I just pulled out of here. It's a 16 at 100, or 16 volt 100 microfarad, and it's definitely shorted, because when I measured it with the meter, it showed me it was a dead short. See? It's a dead short. We'll just try another one of those. We'll just tack one in. 100 microfarad. Maybe that's why it's behaving differently now, but it's not turning on still. I've removed my black tape from the end sensors because that could also make it trip. Well, let's turn it on and let's see if it stays turned on. It's not shutting off. All right, I'm going to clean this head. I don't want to put a tape in there with all that mess in there. I may just clean the heads on this thing. We'll see if this thing will actually load a tape and work. There we go, video 3. I got a blue screen, that's good. Oh, is my belt slipping? That might be my belt slipping. my loading belt that I put in might not be, yeah, it's slipping. Yeah, let me put a tighter belt in. Yeah, let me put a tighter belt in. That belt is slipping, so let me grab a different one. Fingers crossed, that's going to work.
I got a picture. It's not a great picture. It's kind of crushed, dark looking.
Any questions? That is where we caught that overheating cap. Thermal camera. Invaluable. Love it. And yes, I have a couple of other thermal cameras, but they were such a pain in the ass to use because I need to use my smartphone that I avoided them at all costs. But now that I've got this one handy, well, this one will just be hauled out and used whenever I have an instant like this where something appears to be shorting, and it was. Well, the fault on this one was 100 microfarad 16 volt cap in the tuner line, which is that one there. I'll just leave that one on top. I'll just leave the new one in. The other ones were leaking, so I mean those other ones were bad. They weren't shorted, but they were leaking. They had to be replaced. This was the fault that was killing the set, and it was in the tuner supply line. And as we saw when I hit the power button, that trace lit up like a Christmas tree, tracing right down to where the fault was. Cool, huh? Anyway, this thing's working. I want to throw another tape in here, one that doesn't have so many creases in it. Eject. And even though I think I showed you guys, I did grease the mechanism. I'm going to put some more grease in it. I put a little bit of grease in. We're going to throw some more of my fancy lithium grease, which is the same stuff as the moly coat. It's a lithium soap grease, so we'll put a little bit more down here. I don't really need to even strip the other stuff out because it will mix quite nicely with it and stop the machine from being gummed up. I did it on the bottom as well. I didn't show it on camera, but I did lube this slide plate here. So I'll just put a little bit more around here, around some of the moving parts. And it will mix with the other one. It wasn't to the point where it was frozen, it was just bad. For those of you wondering what this grease is called, it's MG Chemicals 8461 white lithium grease made in Canada. This is the stuff that I'm using. I've used this stuff for years. Not lately because I had that yellow moly coat that used to come with these machines. So I was using up what I got for free. But this is the same stuff. If you want to buy this stuff, this is the stuff to get. It's not that expensive. And it's the same grease as the moly coat that I was using that came in the little packets that I've used up. I don't think there's any left. Pretty sure they used them all up. But that's what Mitsubishi used to supply. But it's the same stuff as this. I think we still have some faults on this one. Looking at that picture, it doesn't look as good as I think it should. We may have some bad caps in the preamp. Actually plugged a cable into it and I got the tuner going here. It's the video level itself is wrong. It's too dark from the tuner as well as from tape. So that's not a preamp problem that I first thought. I thought maybe a preamp problem, but it's not because even the on-screen display looks wrong. Right? It just doesn't look right. You see the tuner works. It's a video out problem. Let's just check the levels. I think what we got a problem here is we got a problem with the in the video out circuit. Kind of troubleshot it down to C209. It's bad. I'm going to show you a picture here. I'm going to have to keep this real quick because it's a Macrovision tape, but I just want to see what happens when I tickle this with a new cap. And oh yes, I'll show you the picture. I'm gonna have to keep this real, have to cut this real short, like a couple seconds. Okay, cap off, cap on, cap off, cap on. We'll change that cap. It's this one right down here on the board. C209 is that one. And it's obviously bad because when I bridge it, the picture improves big time. I just put like a 47, a bridge to 47, or was it? Yeah, 47, and it fixed the problem. But this one, as you can see, it is leaking. If I get a close up of that one, you can see the electrolytic is leaking out of the bottom of it. And what type of cap is this one? It's another, oh, this is a Nikon. So I had Rubicons leaking, got Nikons leaking. Let me find a 1000 microfarad cap. We'll tack that in there, and hopefully that's the last we'll see of this machine. I can get it out of here, because I've been working on this thing for a few hours today. More than a few hours. All right, I got another 1000. This is a 16 volt, but that's all I happen to have in that size. So we'll just put this one on here and take a look at the picture. I'll know right away if it's any good. As soon as I turn it on, I should see an improvement in the picture right from the tuner, which I have. Looks great. There's the output now. Again, I got to keep this clip real short. Back to my tape. There's now what it looks like. If we look at the on-screen graphics are also looking proper now, you see. So this one is fixed. We had on this one, what did we have? We had so many things wrong with this thing, it isn't funny. First of all, it had a belt that was turned to mush. That was one. We had a mechanism that was gummed up. That was two, but that wasn't really what was killing the unit. We had a couple leaky caps in power supply that were spewing their guts. They're replaced. We had a dead shorted cap in the tuner power supply that was heating up the trace that was picked up by the thermal imaging camera. And we had a cap in the video output circuit that was bad and giving a bad picture, causing sync instability. So this thing had its share of problems, and I think we've resolved all of them and made a great looking machine that will serve for many more years, especially for what people use it for now, and that's basically just archiving tapes. Yes, I contaminated the heads there. This tape's got some damage, but it's looking as good as I think it's going to look. I'll check my levels here. There's a level control on here. Let's just see if that makes any difference. Yeah, it's looking good. Yeah, we're looking good. Okay, I don't need to do any adjustments. I think I can throw this one back together and get a hold of the fella that might tell me to keep it when he finds out what it's going to cost him to fix it. Now that's a joke. These Mitsubishis, I've always liked these machines. They are one of my favorite. I have 3 favorite machines. Actually 4. There's a JVC that I don't mind, and it's the 9911. That's a good machine. It's a modern one. It's Super VHS. There's also another one that I've got, which is an SVHS ET. I forget the model number. I bought it for $15. But that's another nice little machine that gets the job done. But as far as workhorses go, these Mitsubishis are about as solid as they get. I'm just throwing the screws in this while I'm talking to you guys. Yeah, they're about as solid as they get. They have a few issues, and they've now been resolved on this machine. So I cleaned the mode switch, lubricated the mechanism, replaced the belt, lubed the seized up capstan motor, replaced 4 caps in the power supply, a video output cap, and a shorted cap in the tuner supply that was causing the set to shut down. Lots went wrong with this one. It's now functional again. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.